well, yeah, well, of course, when you were teaching, they wouldn't hire a married teacher. So my friend Elizabeth, who was the kindergarten teacher, that first summer after we'd been in New Buffalo, she got married, but she didn't tell them. So she would go home to Chicago every weekend and be with her husband, but they didn't know she was married. But then the second year, you know, Daddy had been in the service for 1 year, and now we'd had Pearl Harbor, and we were getting worried about what was going to happen if Daddy would be shipped out or something. So we decided we should get married in 1942, in May of 42. And of course, in a sense, that was pretty foolhardy while the war was going on. But that's the plans we made. And I decided that I'd finish, you know, we weren't going to get married until May, so then I could finish school, and then I just wouldn't go back to New Buffalo. I would either follow Daddy or get a job closer to Chicago. But so we went ahead with our plans, and the people in New Buffalo, but then Betty told them that she was going to get married too. She didn't tell them she'd already been married. So the parents, both the kindergarten parents and the first grade parents, got together and gave a shower for the two of us. And it was depression and how they could even afford to buy anything. But I'm using some of the things that I got from those parents still to this day. It was really quite an experience to be there. But Daddy got busy and composed his own song that he sang for me at our wedding.
Oh. Is that written down somewhere?
We were actually married then on the 17th of May, and Tante Lyon never let us forget that, because that's the Norwegian Independence Day. So she sent us an anniversary card every year, and she said, "Happy 17. Mai." But Daddy wrote this song, and when I stood at the end of the aisle to come down on Daddy's Smithy's arm, he sang the song to me as I was coming down the aisle. And I swear I could have just worn jeans, because I don't think anybody saw me. The tears were running, you know. Here's this fellow standing in uniform singing. It was pretty exciting. So we were able to, what I didn't know was that Daddy came home AWOL.
Oh, no.
The week before we were to get married, a plane came in at Chinook Field, and the pilot, when they landed, they discovered the pilot had spinal meningitis. The whole base was quarantined. And the quarantine was lifted the day that Daddy was supposed to leave, but they weren't issuing any passes or any furloughs, and he had both. He had a pass and a furlough, but they weren't issuing them. So he was a chaplain's assistant, so that put him in pretty good stead with people in the offices. And he went to the office and he asked one of his friends if they would mail his pass and his furlough to him, because he knew where we were going to be for our honeymoon. And he came home on the train without any of these papers, just hoping no MP was going to ask for his papers. And luckily they didn't. And I didn't know until we were on our honeymoon that Daddy was AWOL this whole time. But the papers did come while we were up in this little cabin up in the North Woods in Wisconsin.
Wow. Where was that?
Oh, I can't even remember the name of it now. But it was a nice little place in Wisconsin. It was May, so it was really a little bit too chilly, but that couldn't be helped. We had a good time. We had a week up there. And then when we came back, after a while, I finally decided I would go down to Rantoul and see if I couldn't get a job and work down there. And the chaplain that Daddy worked for, he and his wife were so kind. They really thought an awful lot of Daddy. He gave piano lessons to their daughter, and he became almost like a son to them. And they were so nice to both of us. And I finally decided I'd go down there to live. And I did get a job doing substitute teaching. But then Daddy was put on orders because they were going to go on a bivouac. And I had to give up the apartment, or it wasn't an apartment, we just rented a room. I had to go back to Chicago. And then not too long afterward, when they got off of this bivouac, then I did decide to go down, and I got a job in the law library at the University of Illinois, and we lived in Urbana for a while. And we lived in Urbana, and we also lived in what's the other? There are two cities together.
Champaign?
Champaign, yeah. And then finally, Daddy got orders, and he was going to be sent to Madison, Wisconsin, to Truex Field. So we had to pack up. We had taken some of our things and, had an apartment. So all that, Mama and Mutti had to come and help us to move again. And when we came to Madison, I came to stay for a few days to try to find a place to live. But that wasn't easy, to find places to live. And we finally came to this one house on University Avenue, and it was a widow who had a big house, and her family, of course, was grown, and when they had grown up, had left home, she and her husband had converted the bedrooms upstairs to two small apartments, 2 3-room apartments. And that's what she was renting out. And she was a Dutch lady, so she was just as clean as could be. The house was just lovely. And when I saw that apartment, that little 3-room apartment, I thought that was just exactly what we would like to have. But of course, she had a long list of people willing to take the apartment. So we went back to the room we were staying in, and I said to Daddy, I think I'm going to go back in the morning and give her another couple of chaplains' names as references. It won't hurt. And when I came, her daughter was visiting, and her daughter had a couple of young children. And so I sat and visited with them, and in fact, she found out I was a teacher and so forth and so on, So we had a nice visit. And then when I left, and when I got outside to the bus stop, the daughter called to me and she said, come on back. Her mother had decided, okay, we could have the apartment. So I was just really thrilled about that. But it was just about a month or so later that we realized that I was pregnant with Terry. And one of the stipulations was no pets and no children in this little 3-room apartment. So we had to go downstairs to Grandma Himba and say, I'm afraid you're not going to want us any longer. We told her, and she said, you don't think I could put a baby out on the street, do you? And she took such good care of me. I had a job at the hospital Wisconsin General Hospital, which was just about 4 blocks down from the apartment. And her son was a doctor there too. And sometimes he'd come for lunch. And one thing she would fix rather frequently, she would get a liver, beef liver, and boil it. And I'd never had that before. But when I would come for lunch, and she'd see me coming, she'd come with a bowl full of this sliced liver that she said, "This is good for you and for the baby."
Wow.
Yeah.
She took care of me.
Yes.
And we were friends as long as she lived. We kept hearing from her until Grandma Himma died. They were just wonderful people. So that was our war years. Well, maybe you want to quit there?